I wanted to share one of the meditations that I teach and that I practice every day. I've been practicing this for the last 3 years, and it's for me been really fruitful in terms of helping me awaken to my own inner realm and help improve so many different aspects of my being and my life and my consciousness. And I want to share it with you because it's a very foundational practice. It's very simple in terms of being able to remember the instruction of it. And I think it's a nice next step to anyone who is practicing with an app or constantly practicing with a guided meditation, which is totally fine. This is not in any way saying that this is better than guided meditation or the meditations that you have on an app, but it's instead just another option to expose you to, and it can be a nice complement to whatever it is that you're practicing. And you may have already done it before if you do go to different places to meditate, or if you do use different apps. But I wanted to teach it to you in the most foundational way that I know of, so that you can understand the pieces and elements of it and then be able to guide yourself through a meditation. The reason that I think that it's really important to be able to meditate on your own is that it helps you build your sovereignty. And what I mean by sovereignty is that it helps you come to understand your own inner realm and your own intuition. It helps you come to your own answers without the need for having to have a phone with you, headphones, and Wi-Fi to have to listen to a meditation. So I'm going to explain it to you in two different parts, the two main parts of it, the two main components. And after that, I'll give a few tidbits on what the intro and the ending could be for you. So this is called Shamatha. Shamatha is a Sanskrit word that means peaceful abiding or calm abiding, and it's from the Buddhist lineage, so it's been practiced for thousands of years. And there's something very, I think, grounding about knowing that people have been able to continue this practice and continue sharing this practice, and that people to this day are still seeing the fruits of that practice. So it's also called mindfulness of breath, which may be the way that you have heard it. It's a pretty foundational mindfulness practice. So basically, the first part of it is that you're going to be focused on your breath. So just start tuning into your breath, your breathing, and there's a number of ways to do this. So I'm not going to guide you. I'm not doing a guided meditation. I'm going to show you the recipe, so to speak, so that you can piece it together however you would like. But essentially, the focus comes to your breath. So you're trading your focus on any discursive thoughts, and you're trading that for the breath. So you start to concentrate on the breath. So there are a variety of different ways to do that. For me, it's tuning into the heart center and really imagining as if I'm breathing in and out of my heart and noticing the rise and fall of my chest. That's what really works for me, and that helps me tune into a deeper meditation. You can also tune into the rise and fall of your belly. You can feel how your entire body is breathing, so you can almost imagine every cell, every pore inhaling and exhaling. If you have a particularly busy mind, you can, that day or just in general, you can count your breathing, which can be kind of a good way to transition to the more general focused breathing. So you would count your inhalations and you would count your exhalations. So that's really dependent on how you breathe. You can start by testing it with 5 counts. So you inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you would just keep doing that cycle, counting it in your mind. And you might find that after a little while, you start to get into the groove of concentrating on your breath, and you can let that go. You can also really concentrate on the inhale and exhale by saying the words inhale and exhale in your mind. So as you're inhaling, you're saying inhale. As you're exhaling, you're saying exhale. And just doing that over and over again. And the main part of this is that you're doing your best to notice when you're lost in thought, or when you're maybe focused on a certain bodily sensation or a certain emotion. And as soon as you catch that, you come back to your breath. So to whatever you chose as your breathing technique. So if you're counting, come back to the counting. If you're ready to just tune into the breath more generally, do that. And you're doing this as many times as you need to do it. And you'll find that some days it'll be very easy to get into this, and you feel very in tune with your breathing and your breath, and you feel like you're able to like catch the thoughts and come back to breathing. And other days, your mind is just extra busy. And I mean, I've had meditations sometimes where I feel like I was just completely lost and thinking the entire time, and then my bell rings and I come back to the breath. Then the bell rings to remind, technically to end the practice, but that bell sometimes triggers like, hey, you're meditating. And so just come back to the breath there. And even if you just do that, you're meditating. There's no right or wrong way to meditate. There's no good or bad meditation. The point of the practice is just to do it and to try it. And then there's the second layer, which is just as crucial as this core, and that is the compassion layer. So this isn't only a concentration practice, right? Because we're concentrating on the breath. So every time we're thinking, we're coming back to the breath. We're feeling something in our shoulder, we're noticing it, we come back to the breath. We're thinking again, we come back to the breath. And that's the art of concentration, right? But it's not only concentration, it's a heart-centered consciousness. So it's got a very compassionate layer to it. So you can think of this as the texture or the tone or the flavor that you're adding to this concentration practice. And it's very compassionate, very neutral, very gentle. So what does that mean? That means that we're not judging ourselves for how much we're coming back. So, like I mentioned, if you're having a busy mind that day and you're like constantly having to come back, and if your thought is like, you might notice that your thought is like, I'm not a good meditator. Why am I consistently thinking like I can't shut up my mind? So you start to notice some judgment there, and simply notice, observe that, and try to see that as best you can. And when you're seeing that, dissolve it by coming back to the breath and acknowledging that you're not there to judge, that the space that you're creating for yourself, the container that you're creating for yourself in your meditation, is one of unconditional love, meaning complete non-judgment and complete neutrality. So there is zero good or bad, there is zero better or worse, and there's zero analyzing in terms of where you are in that spectrum of good, bad, right? It's very, very simple, and rest in that simpleness, rest in the neutrality of it. You're just coming back, and remind yourself, you kind of have to parent yourself through it. So remind yourself that this meditation is simply to come back to the breath, that you don't need to analyze or judge, that this space is simply to come back to the breath. So it's a very, in that sense, it's very loving, because anything and everything is able to be there, right? Any thought, any sort of emotion, bodily sensation, any part of your experience is completely normal, and we meet it with neutrality. We meet it with what I like to call unconditional love, because we're not We're not putting any sort of judgment on it. So we're not resisting anything. So a lot of times people think this type of meditation is to clear the mind. And in a sense, I mean, from one perspective, yes, you are clearing the mind, but you're not actively clearing it. The clearing kind of shows up and it happens, but we're not trying to like actively push anything away. So we're not resisting anything. So any thoughts that are really sticky, that are like really trying to come in, we're not pushing them away. We're actually saying like anything and everything is fine here, because I know that I can come back to the breath, and I know that this container is one of non-judgment. So if something like seemingly icky or weird or gross or like dark, there's no dark or light here too, but for our understanding, when a dark thought comes in, right, our immediate instinct is like, why did that pop up into my head? Or I must be an awful person because that's coming into my mind. And the idea is that you are creating space between you and the thought, right? Because you are the observer of the thought. You're not tying your existence to the thought. So where that judgment comes in is when we're tying our beingness to that. When we think that that thought is us, that's where the judgment comes in, right? That's when we're like, I must be a nasty person, or why can't I concentrate? You know, all those different layers of judgment come in when we think that we are that. So the key is remembering that you are the observer of your experience. So you're seeing all of this happen. You're watching all of this. So you are the light of consciousness on all the parts of your experience, all the thoughts, all the emotions, all the bodily sensations. You're watching it. And as you're watching, you're seeing them come in, and then you're coming back to the breath. And this is something that eventually translates into your daily life. And I'll talk about integration practices in later videos, but this is mainly for people who are either experimenting with meditation, or have a curiosity about meditating, or are meditating only with an app and relying on other people guiding them through something. So this is something to establish, like I said earlier, your sovereignty, your independence within your own mind, within your own heart mind. And it's very empowering in that sense, because any answers, any clarity, any guidance that you're getting from meditating, it's coming from you, regardless of whether it's guided or not guided. It's always coming from you. But I find that it's particularly clear when there is nothing else, no one else's voice that I'm relying on to calm me down, or to tell me to come back to the breath, or to start to concentrate on love. Or, you know, sometimes we get into this habit of relying on the voice of someone else guiding a meditation to be able to relax, to be able to get into it, when in actuality we have this very, very simple mindfulness of breath practice that we can do by ourselves at any given time. So that's essentially the two parts of this practice. So one is the concentration, right? The concentrating on the breath. And every time you're noticing that you're a little lost in thought, or you've kind of tunneled into some sort of storyline, or maybe you're focusing on a bodily sensation or an emotion, just noticing that. And as soon as you notice it, coming back to the breath. And the noticing part will start to feel more natural the more that you practice it. At first, it might feel like you're not exactly noticing as often as you'd like, but in time, your mind starts to live more in the now. This is what this practice is for, is to live in the now moment, to live in the present moment. And you do start to see a growth from it, in terms of, I mean, you could call it like an improvement on the meditation, but you know, anyone who meditates, or who is exploring any sort of spiritual or self-discovery tools will tell you that it's not a linear process. So there isn't this like A to Z like steps to climb, but there is obviously it becomes more natural to you, and you start to become more present inside and outside of the meditation. The more that you practice it. But you, of course, still have days where you are feeling maybe not as present, or the meditation seems a bit more like it felt when you first started. So just keep that in mind. So the first part, the concentration on the breath. The second part is the compassion layer, the neutrality. So remembering that you are the eye of the observer. You're observing your experience, right? So you're shining the light of your consciousness on anything and everything that is popping up. And there is no light or dark here. There is nothing, there isn't a thought that's too dark to be here. There isn't, anything to judge here. Anything and everything is invited into your experience, and you simply see it and you come back to the breath. And you do that over and over and over again until your meditation is complete. And you can do this for 5 minutes if you'd like. You could do it for, I do typically 20 to 30 every day, maybe 15 to 30 every day. I also practice Reiki. So I'll typically do my Reiki and then a mindfulness practice. But essentially what I'm saying is it can be as long as or as short as you want. I've also done 1 hour of this, or back-to-back hours of it. So it sounds like it's repetitive, or maybe like a bit non-exciting, but the depths and layers that are in, like, kind of like hidden within your breath and your breathing, are infinite. So you could be practicing this your entire life or lifetimes to come, and you would constantly be discovering new things about yourself. So the two parts, concentrating on the breath and the compassion and neutrality layer. And in terms of how to begin the practice and how to end the practice, I like to begin the practice by just taking a few deep inhalations and deep exhalations, and just telling my body, I call it parenting the body. I've heard other teachers call it this. So you're parenting the body, telling the body, I'm going to meditate now. You can tell the body, it's okay to relax, I am safe. So talk to your body, kind of hold it by the hand and have it come along the meditation ride with you. And the inhalations, the exhalations, you can do that just for a few rounds, and then get into your concentration practice. And you can set a timer for this. I like to use Insight Timer. They have a nice bell on there where you can pick the sounds of different Tibetan bowls or gongs, and you set the timer through that. And in terms of how to end the practice, so say your bell goes off, you finished your 15-minute meditation, just close it out however you would like to, however is feeling right. I typically recommend a couple of deep breaths again, and just saying thank you to yourself, just like in your mind, echoing thank you to yourself. And I mean, your body is listening to you, so saying, showing gratitude and talking to your body, I think is really effective in terms of evolving your consciousness and getting to know your inner realm a little bit better. So that's what I like to do. You can also simply end it with just the inhalations, the exhalations, and going on with your day. It doesn't have to be a complicated thing, or you don't have to worry about making it like spiritual or making it loving. The love comes from this practice, and you'll see it. You can't run away from it. Also, I would say the spirituality comes from this practice. Spirituality simply means becoming aware of a greater truth within you. It doesn't mean any type of religion or belief system. So the connection to what could be called your spirit or your soul comes from this. Inner love, self-love comes from this. That compassion comes from this. So trust that you're planting the seeds through the practice. You don't have to, if this is something new to you, you don't have to start with that straight off the bat if it doesn't feel available to you. You can simply treat it as the instructions of beginning with a few rounds of breath, concentrating on your breath, being very neutral when stuff's coming up, when thoughts are coming up, and not judging yourself, just coming back to the breath and closing with a few breaths. So if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to DM me. I'm happy. This is like my favorite thing to talk about. So I'm happy to answer any questions or give you any recommendations for any apps or meditation studios or books, different tools for you to use. So I hope that this helps you in some way. It's a practice that's really awakened me to the power that I have, and I'm so happy to share it with you. Have a beautiful day.